I'm Sawyer, and you're listening to Our House, A to Z.
Welcome to our house, everybody. Happy Friday.
Hey.
That's usually my line.
Thanks. Oh,
Hey. Good morning.
Hey, we're back. It's me, Ashley. I'm an alto.
I didn't say that's my voice. I said that's my line.
You have the best voice.
Oh my gosh.
Everybody loves your voice. I think we should just carry this conversation. We should keep going with it because I think it's really good. And it's got me thinking.
What?
About like...
This wasn't a podcast conversation. This was
this is a private one?
Private conversation.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. No, forget it. Let's not do it. Let's not talk about it. But we do have some really good podcast topics. Especially a big shout out to, first of all, a big shout out to Billy Connolly, who between him and Steve Paiva, they're going to get me back in the gym.
Oh my gosh.
Billy texted me that I guess there's some month of May thing.
It's gonna be May.
Hey.
You're supposed to go to the gym 21 days in the month of May. So.
Oh, really? I'm trying to. I'm trying to do 6 days a week for the month of May.
Okay.
I started a new Peloton program. Like
they have not in the gym. You're talking about on the Peloton.
Well, yeah, and strength classes and stuff like that.
Okay.
But they have stuff. They have like different kind of programs monthly that you can sign up for within Peloton.
Yeah.
So you can do like, hey, this is like a core thing for the month, and this is work out this many days to earn like badges and stuff like that.
Badges. Mm-hmm. I like that. Well, I don't know if I'm going to be earning any badges, but I do feel like I'm out of the swing and I got to get back in it.
Yeah.
So, I took the whole month of April off. So.
Right. And almost all March.
No, not almost all March. No.
Okay.
Like the last couple of days.
Did you go to the gym when your mom was at our house?
Yeah.
No, you didn't.
I did.
No, you didn't.
No? Mm-mm. You sure?
I'm sure.
I feel like I might have just to get away.
You didn't.
No? Okay. Well, either way, looking forward to getting back in there. I need that to happen probably because it does affect every part of your life. It's like...
It affects every part of your life.
Yeah. And I can spiral pretty quickly into some pretty big
bad.
Mess, pretty bad.
Well, health habits.
Couch. I've gained like 50 pounds in the last month and a half, so...
It's not just a weight thing. It's overall like body health things.
All right. Talk to me about body health.
No, I'm just saying, like, when you're not doing it, it's like if you don't exercise, you are less inclined to like eat well or sleep well or any of those things. But it feels like when you get a really good workout and you're like, hey, I'm going to be like, I want to make sure that was worth it and counts. And so I'm going to not eat that.
I don't feel like anything inclines me to sleep well for some reason, no matter what.
That's not true. You do.
That's why the gym thing was tough because it was so early and I still didn't go to bed any earlier.
I know, but you were going way earlier than you need to. I think so.
Well, in the summer, I do plan on going a little bit later because the kids don't have to go to school. And that will make it, I think that will be way more reasonable. But it just ends up, I get like 4 hours of sleep and I need more probably. So, but it's all good. Anyway,
here's
to new, better, healthy New Year's resolution habits. This is a spring resolution.
And on May... Something.
May 2nd.
The first week of May.
The diet starts now.
No.
The diet starts now.
No.
Anyway, our girl Abra Owens, who is...
She's a faithful podcast listener.
She's a faithful lot of things.
She is a faithful lot of things. Faithful his kids' worker.
Faithful
second row Sunday morning worshiper.
Faithful still dark out, but in the gym. Because she was one of the few that was there as early as... I was there with Steve, so.
I think that's why I like her so much because she's so, like, steady, and that is, like...
She's very steady.
Steadiness to me is, like, super important.
And that's exactly why you married me, because I am one of the most steady, consistent, predictable people that you've ever met in your life.
It's not the predictable thing to me. Even though I guess that there's like part of that, but it's I feel like there's like an order representation there that is like discipline, like self-discipline and self-control. And hey, that's a fruit of the Spirit. Like I feel like it's a tangible way to see a fruit of the Spirit in your life.
Huh. Interesting. Well, I love that. And I remember when I was doing my master's with Liberty and I had to do some intensives down there. We had a lecturer one day who has written a couple of books, and I want to say his name was Norman something, and I want to say
I think that was a painter, Norman Rockwell.
No, it was Norman Bates, I think, but
From the Bates Motel?
No, it wasn't him. I don't know about any books he wrote, but no, and he had written a couple of books, but he lectured on living a well-ordered life. And
Wait, what year was that? That was like 12 years ago?
yeah, it was like around when the
12
church
years ago?
started. Because I was doing my master's.
I want to know what was going
to
through
right
your
after.
mind listening to a well-ordered life message.
Like how important and how good it really is, and how much I don't have it.
Okay,
Like,
so
that's what's
why?
going through my mind.
Why do you feel like, do you feel like you have a more well-ordered life today than you did 12 years ago?
Yes, definitely.
I think so.
I mean, 100% so.
So why do you feel like you didn't then? Like what changed from then to now?
I don't know. I think we live lives now that don't really allow for too much. We've like created lives that guardrailed,
Yeah.
you know? It's like we're...
But it's something you have to do. Like you have to be intentional to do it.
Well, that was his whole point of how intentional you have to be to do this well-ordered life. But he brought in so much like biblical stuff behind it. It wasn't just like a live your best life. It wasn't just like this motivational speech. It was like, no, God really set it up this way that when we're disciplining ourselves and I'll say like making sacrifices and denying ourselves certain things. And by the way, that is like not something I'm good at. I'm like I have an addictive personality. And I mean, so for instance, last night I'm out, it's after 10 o'clock at night. I'm in the driveway. I hadn't had a nap. I hadn't had caffeine all day. I'm in the driveway and I'm furiously working away on something. And I'm like ready to get in the car and drive to Cumberland Farms because I want a Pepsi.
Like right that second.
So bad.
And it was
Like,
10:30.
I was craving a Pepsi. Now I haven't even drank Pepsi. Well, I mean, I probably had a restaurant. I'd had a glass or something in the last month. But I'm like, I've gone through seasons where I'm like, I'm like drinking loads of Pepsis, and I'm like, man, I will just sound so good, a fountain Pepsi right now, like at 10 something at night,
Right.
when I'm outside working power tools, you know,
Music blaring.
making the neighbors like furious.
And I'm trying to text you from bed, like, hey, can you turn the music down? Just not for me, but for our neighbors. Our neighbors who have children that they're trying to put to bed.
Anyway, so yeah, I'm like, man, that's how quick like I spiral. Like I'll go from like, you know, a month ago or whatever to being up all night.
But that's like the routine thing. It's like that's the importance of
Everything's so
routine
bad.
because if
Yeah.
you had done a normal like routine, then you wouldn't be in that place where you're like, what I really need is a 32-ounce fountain drink from Cumberland Farms at 10:30 at night.
Which, by the way, I want everybody to know I did not go get it. Okay, I didn't go get it.
What stops you?
The fact that I had already hooked the trailer up to the car, and I was like, I don't really feel like unhooking everything. I'm like,
That's the only thing.
I'm in a groove. If I hadn't been, I
I
probably
need
would have just
something
gone.
carbonated.
I did. So anyway, I settled for seltzer water.
Your wife had some seltzer water for you.
Thank you. You're the best. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. But
I
yes.
mean, you're not going to find soda. You're not going to find soda in the house.
I know, but the well-ordered life thing is so important, and I can say that from like the hypocritical side and the side of like the hypocritical, like I don't always have a well-ordered life, and the other side, it's like even when you bring in a little bit of order, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And
But I don't want
that's
people
the thing
to think
about
that like if you add order to your life, everything is fixed and everything's great and everything's wonderful. That is not true. You can be somebody who's like really well ordered and self-disciplined and all that, and it doesn't mean like that your spouse is in the same boat. And so that there's stressors to that, and it causes tension, and you can still have really difficult things in your life even if you live a really well-ordered life.
Well, there's a well-ordered life, and then there's a well-ordered marge, you know, and then there's a well-ordered parenting.
Yeah,
you know,
but there's only one, like in all of those things, the only thing you can control is yourself. You can't have self-control for somebody else.
Well, and I also think that, you know, Jesus teaches us this, right? And then we see it over and over, but like the more we're willing to give up, the more of like whatever our flesh wants that we're willing to give up, it's almost like the better off we are. Like the more like self-denial, which I'm not a monastic. Like I'm not like, oh, you know, go live in silence and solitude and, you know, eat old bread or whatever. I'm like, I've watched in my own life as I'm like as you pull things out and create narrower and narrower margins, you're just better off.
Now, do you remember any other times in your life, aside from like fasting periods, do you remember other times where you were like, hey, I should probably have more order here? Like, hey, I probably shouldn't drink so much Pepsi or
Yeah, and the older you get, the more you see it. At least for me. Now,
No, I know, but I'm saying before we were married, like when you were in like high school, or college, do you ever remember being like, hey, I should probably...
Nope.
No.
Nope, not at all. Because I was good at everything I did and I got everything done. I made great grades. I did my jobs.
So you didn't have people around you that were like stressed out by your lack of order.
Yeah. But at that point, like people can just remove themselves from your life.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't getting fired from jobs for it. Like I wasn't showing up late to things. Like I think a lot of times people identify lack of order with
time, punctuality,
or just like being able to like be committed to something, it's all like grouped into this thing, and that wasn't the case for me. Like
it's not the same for everybody.
I did everything well, and I was juggling a lot of different things, wrapping up school and working, but it wasn't until I think our relationship started to develop that I was holding myself up to you and to us.
Yeah,
and then it's like, and this is probably a good segue into our marriage conversation this morning, which, yes, we are still on marriages, but just the idea of using your spouse as a sort of like a sounding board for your own character. And not that like disorder is necessarily a character flaw. I'm not saying it's like an ethical issue or a sin issue necessarily.
Right.
It's a health issue, is what it is.
Yeah.
And so like you called me out on it like a week ago and you're like, hey, like it just seems like there's some unhealthy patterns like developing, and I wish I could say, oh, since that conversation, I've like been able to go and just totally shift everything, but it hasn't really worked that way.
Right.
And so it's more like
I think just having it in your head is like a good rubric almost to have there. Like you're running everything by that. Like, hey, am I doing this because of that, or like why am I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's how my brain works. Where it's like you're thinking about it. So at least the awareness, I feel like, is helpful when it comes to self-discipline.
Now, is the same question for you.
Yeah.
Like how you lived your life, how you saw yourself, and then coming into relationship that was like developing quickly towards marriage and that sort of thing. Do you feel like you felt challenged at all in how you were carrying out your life, or like patterns? Could you point back and say, oh, this was unhealthy, or this was unrealistic, or this was, unsustainable? I
mean, I think I've always had that personality that was, I don't want to say like critical in like a terrible way, like not necessarily critical of other people, but I've always been like critical of myself in like not necessarily in like a confidence way, where I think some people, similar to like the disorder and like it has to do with punctuality and all of that, like I always want to be improving. Like I always think that something should be getting better all the time. So I always had that on myself. Not like, again, not critical of myself, like had a hard time like, looking in the mirror and all that kind of stuff that you usually hear with that. But it was more like, you can do better. Like you can be better. You can, I don't know. I think that if anything, when we first started, like it was a little bit, that it was very challenging for me because you were so like all over the place. And I'm so not all over the place but it was good for me too, because I think I had so much structure and so many walls.
Did you feel like your challenge to be better was to like come away from that? When
yeah,
you're saying
for
you
sure.
Can be better, you can be better. It's
for
like
sure.
you can have more freedom in your life, or you can have more spontaneity or something.
All of that.
Good. Well, I guess that works both ways.
Thanks for finishing that for me, because
we seem to be struggling with it a little bit there, but that's all right. That's what I'm here for. All right. I want to get to this topic because I think it merits some pretty good attention, and if we need to have any other commercial breaks, we can. But,
okay.
So I wanted you to say it just like she said it, which was, can we talk about weaponized incompetency?
Yeah.
I think that's such an interesting paradox.
Right.
It's like definitely.
Yeah, she said weaponized incompetency, and I was like, you're going to have to like define that for me because I don't even know what you mean by that.
Sure.
And
so why don't you say what her definition, or just describe it?
All right. So I haven't done too much research into this, but basically at its most broad level is kind of when there's obviously you have the two spouses, and one is kind of like these are certain things that I don't do.
I don't do windows.
I don't do windows. I don't empty trash.
Right.
I don't change diapers. I don't clean. I don't mow the lawn. I don't whatever they don't do.
Right.
And it's almost like and so the incompetency is like because I can't. Like that's not really my thing. Like I can't do that. I can't be stretched. I can't be pushed. I can't be put outside my comfort zone. And so the other spouse in situations like that kind of does it instead. Like it's always like, oh, okay, you can't do that, so I'll take that. You can't do that, okay, so I'll take that.
Yeah, interesting.
And I think for some couples, it is like, hey, I don't change diapers because I have a ridiculous like gag reflex and I'll literally start like vomiting on the floor. And you're like, oh, okay, like if it's like a one thing, like a one-off, like, hey, I don't bake because I'm literally a horrible baker and I'll burn everything I make and mess up the recipe. Although there's part of me in that improver that's like, you can do this. Like, I'm going to challenge you. Like, let's take it slow and follow the directions.
Now, I feel like you've never really challenged me on things that I don't do.
Yes, I have.
Really?
Yeah. Like the car stuff. I asked you like several years into our marriage, like, I need you just to like do the oil changes. Like, I'm not going to do it.
Okay.
And this is a man's job.
But to be fair,
and you were like, you did not do anything like that. Like, just go get the car oil changed before that.
but that had probably more to do with my lack of order than it did.
I know, but that's
like,
what I'm saying. That
I
was the
wasn't
challenge.
I wasn't like,
you can
I don't do
this.
oil changes.
No.
Like, I wasn't like, no, honey, you're gonna do the oil changes.
I know, but that's what I'm saying to you. It was like, yeah, you can still like challenge people into doing stuff when they feel like, hey, it's not my thing necessarily.
Yeah, and some of
Anyway.
it's just like growing into responsibilities.
Yes,
but
of course it is.
I think of weaponized income. I feel like that is not an incompetency thing. That
No.
is an awareness. It's a level of awareness.
I know. I'm just drawing the difference. I'm drawing a line between the difference
Yeah.
where it's kind of like the, hey, yeah, I don't do any of those things, and it's not really my thing to help the kids with homework, and it's not really my thing to clean. So when I get home from work, like, I'm going to sit and watch TV because this is what I'm good at, and you are going to help the kids with homework and unpack lunch boxes and get dinner ready and make sure kids are showered, and all of that is like, I think we definitely have unbalanced workload relationship when that's the case. And it's like, well, hey, I brought home the check today.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, so when I hear weaponized incompetency,
You can't just make up your own definition, just so you know.
what immediately comes to mind is like, it's like socialism. It's more of like the mindset of like, well, I don't want to have a consistent job, or I don't want to pay my bills, but I want still a place to live. So I'm going to accept someone else doing everything for me.
I mean, it is that's the same thing. It's like you do everything, and I'm going to benefit from the great marriage and all the perks that come with it.
Which is not a great marriage at that point. It's not a great anything at that point. But I feel like there's another side of it. And
there's always another side.
So to me, the other side of it is it's really easy to, especially when you're unhappy or discontent or unsatisfied or unfulfilled, it's really easy to only see what you do.
Yeah.
Really easy.
Yes, totally.
And part of it is you see what you do because you're wired to see that. And whereas somebody else might not recognize that what you're doing is this huge, great workload effort, and they're feeling like, no, I'm doing my part. I am doing something. I am whatever. So,
Right.
I mean, fill in the blank. And again, I know that it may be different across domestic paradigms. Like if you're a two income family and two full-time jobs, or one's a stay at home the other's a full-time that.
Kids or no kids, all those things.
Yeah, and the ages of kids.
Yeah.
Are your kids old enough to actually help? You
Right,
know, that
right.
sort of thing. So I know that a lot of this shifts and shakes and things, but I just feel like the other side of it is important to understand, that if you're feeling like your spouse has weaponized their incompetency and is defending their, them being enabled to not work or not help or not serve, at least before you get upset or frustrated about it, at least have a conversation.
Yeah.
Because I think that you may not see a lot of the other stuff that's happening.
Right.
Or you see what's happening, and in your rubric, it's not that much.
Right.
But what you're doing is a ton.
Yeah.
And the other person might be looking at the exact same thing.
It's true. I mean, that is a thing that I definitely struggle with, especially when I'm PMSing. I am like, I'm doing everything.
That's so
And
weird.
what do I do here?
You never
like, I'm
PMS.
basically like a slave in this house. I don't say those things out loud,
only for like
but it's
3
just in
days a
my
month?
head. But it's just in my head, and you feel like very overwhelmed, and you're like, how do I do? Like, I do everything. And so sometimes I have to like take some deep breaths and be like, okay, like, no, that's not true. Like, I know that's not true. And like mentally go through a list of like all the other stuff somebody does. You might have to do that. Like, you might actually have to do that and not let your emotions get the best of you. But I do think that there's also like the enabling side where I do believe that there are like some spouses who kind of want to do it all and find satisfaction in enabling the other person.
Yeah.
So is that wrong? I feel like everybody's marriage is so different.
Okay, so I'll give an example,
Yeah.
right? Not to name names because I'm not going to do that, but I think I have seen marriages that take on like the wife becomes the mother and the husband becomes the son.
Yeah.
And so that is, I don't think that is healthy because
it's not healthy.
the wife has needs that are met by doing everything.
Yeah.
But what the end result is, you end up treating your husband. There's no respect or honor for your husband. You're treating him like a son.
Yeah.
And so, and then he enjoys that because he grew up as a mother's son, and it always worked out to his advantage.
Yep.
Where he never had to take responsibility for anything. He was never, held accountable to anything. It was like a free-for-all. And so I think that can be really, really toxic.
It definitely can.
So no,
Another podcast.
So to answer your question though, I think that yes, it is the enablement factor. Even if to the one who is doing the enabling, they feel empowered by it.
Right.
That is like not a good level of empowerment.
And in the same vein, when it can be unintentional, where it's not like, hey, I want to do everything and I'm going to like mother you as like a child as with your spouse, but when you do everything, it can feel like even though you don't want it to be, where you're like the parent. So now I'm like parenting and taking control of everything in the whole situation because I have so much on my plate. And what happens in that, when you don't want that and you don't thrive in that, you end up being usually like berating, I feel like, because you kind of get this like bit of like superiority and a hierarchy in your marriage where I'm kind of the boss here, and this can be a man or a wife. And so it ends up coming out like verbally. And we've said this before, like when you end up, people know it, like when you're with a couple and one spouse is like constantly like belittling and berating the other one, it's super awkward and super terrible.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I feel like is fueled by situations like that, where I'm now like the one who lords over you because you are incompetent to really do anything, make good decisions, pay bills well.
And now the weaponizing is actually on the part of the competent one.
Yes,
where like
totally.
They're weaponizing your incompetency against you. So how do you solve that?
Oof, probably counseling.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends. Like if I would not have called like what you're describing about like the early part of our marriage, I would not have thought of that as weaponized incompetency. But if
I didn't think of it like that either.
Oh, you put that out there as a first example. I didn't know if that was something. No, I was drawing the line to say it's different. It wasn't the same thing as incompetency. It wasn't the same thing as incompetency. Okay. So the question is, if you're dealing with this, if this is in your marriage, like where would you go to like begin to find a solution here to reconcile this?
I guess it depends what side you're on. Like if you're on the side where you feel like you do everything, like that kind of side. I mean, I think that is, we'll say it on here a million times, conversation. Like you have to have a conversation. Communication is key, and how it's presented. Like, hey, I'm feeling like, honestly, like everything workload wise at the house is off balance right now. Like there could be things that I'm missing, and I'm totally fine for you to, like, I need you to bring those to my attention because right now I'm feeling like I'm drowning and I feel like you're not helping.
Sometimes I think our spouses too are good to teach us to like rest. Like sometimes what looks to one spouse as incompetency.
No, but you're going to another extreme right now. But we just need to get to the one point. This one thing.
A healthy amount of like downtime.
Are you having PTSD from any of our conversations when I just started that? Is that why?
No, I don't. I'm actually thinking of another couple right now.
Oh, okay.
But no, I think it's I think letting each other, like you'll let me sit on the couch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like oh, what a dog, what a terrible, no good for nothing husband because you like fall asleep on the couch for like a half hour in the afternoon or something. I don't feel like it, although I feel like it bothers you and like you wish I didn't.
It bothers me less now. It bothered me more when when all the kids were really little. I think it was harder for me then.
Okay.
Now it's not as, because everybody's kind of like in a season where they can kind of take care of themselves more.
Yeah.
They're more self-sufficient. I think then when you have like a 2, 3, 5, and 6-year-old, it felt really hard. Like it felt like, hey, I just worked all day too. Like this, like I really could have a little hands-free time while I make dinner and unpack everybody's stuff from the day and do laundry, like all of that. I do remember feeling like I might just take a pillow and suffocate you. So yes, some of that has changed.
Well,
now I only feel like that once in a while.
Oh, okay.
But not as often as I used to.
Wow. So sleep with one eye open out there, all you incompetent men.
It's not a men thing, and it's not an incompetency thing.
No, I said incompetent men.
I think that's actually why I get more mad, is that you are not incompetent.
Well, maybe if I was, I could weaponize it. I just feel like we do need to be a little bit more aware of the other side, whichever side you're on. So if you're on the incompetency side, it's really taking note and becoming a little more aware of everything that your spouse is doing.
Yep.
And not just everything they're doing, and this is a big one, right? So it's not just what you're doing in terms of housework, but what you're doing like specifically for your marriage. Mm-hmm. And I want to like make sure that I get a little window in on this too, because I think that we can find ourselves in seasons where excusing ourselves from not putting the work in, especially when we know there's like maybe 1 or 2 or 3 things that our spouse really needs from us.
Yeah.
And if you're the spouse that is the one who is doing a heavy workload, give the other one some grace in saying like, hey, let's just start with 2 things. Like, can you help me with this? Can you do this? Can you get the oil changed in the car?
Yeah.
Can you take the trash out?
I know, but it is hard. Like sometimes it does feel like you don't want to feel like you're parenting somebody. You don't want to feel like you're talking to a child and be like, what I need you to do is 1 and 2. And if you do a good job with those over the next 3 weeks, then do you know what I mean?
You get
like
a gold star.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to be like that.
I don't think you do either, but I think sometimes it can feel like that.
I know, but I think it's good for both people because it's really good for the person who needs the other one to do something. It's really good for that person to say, wait a minute, okay, I'm feeling really overwhelmed, but if I actually had to start making a list of things that I need this person to do, it's probably not as insurmountable as it feels.
Right.
Like it's probably like, God, they don't do anything.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like why I'm saying it's important to understand there's another side to this. It's like you feel a certain way.
Right.
You feel like they're not doing anything, like they won't get off their butt, like they won't help around the house, like they whatever it is. But really, it's like, gosh, there really are like 2 or 3 things. And if you just start, and if you can get yourself to say, wait a minute, forget my emotion, my frustration, my stress, my everything else aside, my hormones, whatever else I'm dealing with, get that aside. What I actually need you to do is like just clean up after we put the kids to bed so that we can go to bed with a clean house.
Right.
And like, oh, that's like 30 minutes and...
Yeah.
You know, whatever.
Yeah. And if you tend to err on the like, hey, I don't really like see it, like I don't, maybe you're the one who's like, yeah, my spouse does a lot of the work and I work all day and I get home and I do want to like not do anything from 4 p.m. on for the rest of the day. Do your spouse a favor and be a little bit more self-reflective. I think the incompetency thing there is we can like brush a lot of that off and be like, hey, I worked all day. If you are married, you have kids or don't have kids, if you are married, you have a part to play that is more than going to work during the day.
Right.
You have a part to play. If you own a home or even if you rent a home, you have responsibility there too. Unless you have a spouse that is like, I do not want you to do anything in the house at all. I'm going to be
Don't touch
100% caretaker of our home.
Yeah.
Then you have a responsibility to play.
Whether or not they say it with that accent or not, I
feel like if it was the case, then they do have that accent.
they do. Yeah, it's like a Downton Abbey wannabe.
You have responsibility there. You have responsibility in your home. Whether you are a man or you are a woman, you have responsibility. So use a little bit of self-reflection and your brain and say, like, hey, how can I contribute? How can I contribute? How can I be a part of what's going on here? No, don't always wait for your spouse to be frustrated. Don't wait for your spouse to turn and be like, hey, do you think you could do this? And you'd be like, yeah, I was just waiting for it. Like, if you ask, just ask me and then I'll know to do something.
No, be more proactive than that.
Be proactive.
Even if you are really, truly are like really ignorant of what needs to be done, like ask.
Yes.
And I feel like I've gotten to that point sometimes where I'm like, okay, what do you need? What do you need? Like every once in a while, if I'm like, okay.
Do you feel like sometimes when you ask me that though, I feel like you can be a little bit patronizing?
Yeah, definitely. But it doesn't mean I can't still do whatever it is that I need.
I'm going to come up with something.
Yeah, I know. I do know. But I know that me doing whatever that is better than...
Sometimes I panic. Sometimes when you're like, anything you need me to do, like sometimes when you're being a little bit of like...
What?
Jerk. I'll be like, you need to think of something really quick. There's got to be something. Switch the laundry. Thanks.
Well, because you're like scurrying around. Usually I'll ask it because you're like scurrying around like you're running out of time or like you're stressed out or something's going. It's like, okay, so let me just throw this out there. I'm here. Let me know what I can do.
Yep.
And sometimes it actually isn't anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Sometimes it's not. But like, for example, we had this thing where we were arguing about where Zach would come in or like finish a show or whatever, and it would be like 9:30 at night. The kids are all in bed, and you'd like turn around and go straight up to bed.
Yeah.
Like without saying anything or like communicating like, hey, I'm going up. You just like disappear. Like I could be sitting on the couch, like doing something on my computer or in the kitchen or whatever. You just like disappear. And was like, that made me really mad. And so what would I do? Tell everybody what I would do.
What would you do?
Tell everybody. What would I do?
You would stay downstairs for a long time. And make sure that I knew you were mad. Yeah. And
do all the things. And then I come upstairs and I would say, do you think you could let me know when you were going to bed instead of just disappearing?
And then I started to let you know and it didn't help.
That's not true.
Because you didn't really want me to just let you know. You just didn't want me to go upstairs.
That's not true. I would say this. I would say, Zachary, there are like 3 things that I do every night before we go to bed.
Right.
Instead of leaving me to do those things every night and just disappearing, could you help? Like, could you say like, hey, does the laundry need switching? Because every night it would be let the dog out, lock the house up, start the dishwasher, and switch the laundry. Every night I do those things before I go to bed.
Right.
And sometimes it's nice just to have some help with that when you know those are the things that need to be done instead of just disappearing.
Yeah.
And then what'd you do? You'd say,
I don't know.
Hey, do you want me to let the dog out? Did the dog go out? I can let the dog out. Does the laundry need to be switched? Then you do it. But it took conversation.
I remember a different version of this story. But that's okay. That's all right.
What? How different? How different of a version?
It was different, but it's okay because I don't feel like everybody knows there's 2 sides to every story. I don't feel like that's what's important. I feel like it is. You just have to like communicate. And so I feel like whether it's you letting me know or me asking or however you have to get to it. And that's kind of like lends itself to that same point of, okay, if there are those couple things, like you said, there are 3 things every night. It's like whatever inconvenience that is to you out there, whatever it is that your spouse needs to feel valued or to feel, you know, like your marriage is restorative or whatever, like just do them. Just do them. Like instead of finding reasons to not do them or instead of finding excuses or instead of justifying.
Because in your head, you're like, what does it even matter? Like,
What does
none
it
of
even
those
matter?
things even matter. If
None of
that
it
starts,
matters.
if the dishwasher starts, if the laundry gets switched, if any of those things,
Yeah.
you're like, whatever. Like, just come upstairs. Like, why is that such a big deal? You should have just come upstairs.
Yeah, because I would be like, well, why does all that stuff have to wait until now?
Right.
Like, why couldn't we have done this earlier, or why couldn't we have gotten home earlier from
Right.
wherever we were?
Oh, you're going to say, why couldn't we have gotten home earlier?
Earlier from where we were.
Really? Oh.
Or anything like
Wow.
that, because
Just wow.
And honestly, this
Like, I'm
doesn't-
getting home late from anything. You're the only one who gets home late for anything.
This doesn't go
Who's the
back
we?
years. This goes back to when I first started going to the gym really early. Because what happened was I was like really tired at night.
Zach, you are,
And so
you are
I
trying
didn't-
to
I know.
shift blame on
I'm
the
not-
fact that you were
I'm not-
working out.
I'm not
Wow.
blame shifting. I realized like
Wow.
I didn't want to do any late night things anymore, because I feel like for years we always stayed up really late downstairs making Blue Aprons, doing all that stuff together, watching a show. We'd put it down, we'd do the dog, and then we'd go upstairs, and it would be like really late. We did it for years like that. And then I started waking up really early and like not being interested in late night things or eating or anything late at night. And then
You were definitely still interested in some late night things.
some late night things, yeah, but they were already in bed things. Not like, let's piddle around the kitchen for another like 45 minutes.
Piddle around the kitchen. It's like 15 minutes to do all those things.
I don't know. Anyway.
And I say I'm the one because in the morning, if the dishwasher never ran, who is the one like pulling stuff out of the dishwasher, having to hand wash things for lunch boxes or whatever it is?
Me.
Moi.
Okay.
Who is going to be like held over the freaking flames if somebody's clothes are not ready on a school morning? Moi.
Yeah, it's
If
true.
the dog pees in the house, who's going to be responsible? Moi. For not letting the dog out.
You gotta let the dog out. It's your dog.
Well, now our dog's dead, so we don't have to let the dog out
That
anymore.
got dark.
Yep.
Too soon. Anyway, point is, I think it's really important that if there are a couple of things, or if there's a whatever thing, or if there's a certain time of day or a certain whatever expectation. I mean, we've talked about expectations on here so many times, it's not even funny. But in marriage, the expectation piece is like that we're sacrificing and helping each other, that we're serving each other, that we're submitting to each other's needs.
Agreed.
And I just feel like the more like comfortable we can get with discomfort, the better off we're going to be. And it is literally the exact same thing as the well-ordered life. The more you can deny yourself, like when you just feel like doing X and you instead do Y because that's where your spouse is at, that's what they need you to do, and that's what's going to make them fulfilled, you're going to be better off for it every time, every time, every time. Even if it's something that you don't even really want to do, because none of those things were things I didn't want to do.
Right.
None of those things were like, oh, I really hate that, or oh, that's gross, or oh gosh, I really don't want to do that, you know. But I think the more we're in a routine of just saying, okay, like this person likes this,
Right.
forget if they even need it. It's just they enjoy it, they
Right.
like it. Do it.
Do you want me to start the dishwasher earlier? I can start the dishwasher earlier,
No,
but
I
here's-
started it early last night. I started at like
we didn't run the dishwasher yesterday.
Yeah,
Because
we
there
did.
wasn't enough dishes. No, we got takeout last night. So it was not. That's why I loaded breakfast dishes
Was it
into
2
the
days ago?
dishwasher.
I started the dishwasher like right after dinner. Like I thought that was yesterday, but maybe it was
It was
2 days
Sunday
ago.
night.
Oh, it was Sunday night.
But here's the deal.
Oh, and by the way, if you're listening to this, that's not a week ago. We're recording this on Tuesday. Like, wow, that guy really does live a disordered life.
It's because I start the dishwasher very late because it's like the last thing I do because I like to make sure every last dish goes in there.
Yeah.
And sometimes right when you get ready for go to bed, you get a glass out and you drink a big glass of water and then you put the glass down right next to the edge of the sink.
That's true.
And so if I had
Sometimes. That's like all the time.
if I every
part
night,
of my routine.
I know. So if I had already started the dishwasher, that last glass every single night doesn't make it into the dishwasher.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Well, I'm gonna save all my things for another podcast.
Oh, so weaponized incompetency. I don't know if we really hit that correctly. We had a lot of rabbit trails, but here we are talking about
we are.
marriage, and
And we're
it's
gonna
very
keep
real
talking
for
about it.
everybody.
So anyway, thank you for listening. We love you guys, and pray for us this time.
Zach.
Oh, Lord, help us.
This is a thriving marriage.
It is. We did
This
just
is what
say
it looks
that.
like,
Wasn't
folks.
that
I
last
know.
week that we were like, our marriage is thriving?
That's what I'm saying, is that you can have a thriving marriage, and doesn't mean it's perfect. There's like stuff, and I don't even. It's
Our marriage
stuff
is
that's
perfect.
just stuff, and it's still perfect stuff.
It's perfect. All right. Lord, help us. We need your help, God, and you love it that we need you. And so we just, we love it that you let us need you. And so we just pray for your guidance in our marriage, especially, God, just for selflessness and for that fruit of the Spirit that Ashley talked about, God, that we do need self-control. We do need just disciplines in our lives that help us not just to become better people, Lord, and live more well-ordered lives for ourselves, but Lord, so that our marriages can enjoy the fruit of that self-discipline and that self-denial. So we just love you. We thank you. We pray over our marriages, Lord, and over our minds, and just that God, we would grow into those people that you have given us your Spirit to be. So we love you and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Our House friends and family, thank you for stopping by today, and we'll see you next Friday on Our House.
This is Messer. And I'm Willa. This is our house from A to Z. Thanks for coming over.
Mother.
It's a rite of passage.
Mother, I crave violence.
Ba-down, 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 ba-down.